Hey, my name's Josh,
I'm Logan.
and we're coming to you from J.R.Heller, Real Estate and Mortgage. And today we are going to talk about, man, I like your shirt. That is cool. The little skull dudes on there.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That's legit.
A little Halloween
If
theme.
you're in real estate, you can get skull collared shirts like that, the button downs, man.
Yeah, man.
Very cool. What are we talking about today, Logan?
I think we're talking fix and flips, yeah?
Fix and flips. Great thing to talk about. Love fix and flips.
So do I.
Yeah, man.
Great investment opportunities.
Absolutely. Good stuff on it. So what do you look for when you look for a fix and flip? What's the primary thing? How do you get started? What are you trying to do? What are you looking for?
Well, so first off, in any investment, especially in real estate, it's all about purchase price. You know, what you make your money on the buy.
Yep.
So on fix and flips, obviously the more distressed the property is, and honestly, the more distressed the seller is, you know, the better of a deal you're going to find. If you find a property in an area that is gentrified and, you know, up and coming and really nice area, but there's, you know, a couple properties here and there that need a ton of love and, you know, not just TLC, we're talking full reno, you know, and sellers that, you know, just got behind keeping up with the property, got behind on mortgage, taxes, you know, whatever the case may be, maybe going through divorce. There's some motivation there, and that's what you're looking for to find, you know, good deals. Because it's all about the margins, right? You know, you got to project what you're going to be selling at, you know, in 3 to 6 months, depending upon how large and how long of a project it is. And you're just basically reverse engineering the numbers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I always say motivation-wise, there's a lot of different like motivating factors like you kind of touched on. It's not necessarily just property motivation, like meaning property condition motivation. You know, it could be, I had a call with a gentleman this morning we're going out to take a look at. He just bought the property last year, and the property appreciated in value. It was a little bit of a fixer-upper, didn't need a whole lot of work when he moved in, but like paint, carpet would like force appreciation quite a bit. So he got it for a pretty decent deal, right? But he's getting a new job offer, and it's outside of the area of where he lives now. And so he's literally willing to sell for basically break even, and there's still a value add in there. And he understands and knows full well that, you know, there needs to be enough room for somebody like me to come in and put a little bit of work in it, put a little bit of money into it, and still make a profit at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And he's completely okay with that. He spoke with the realtor. The realtor was like, hey, if you list it on the market, you could probably get X. But he understood, like, I'd rather take time out of the equation. I don't want to have showings. I don't want to have to mess with all that. I understand I'd probably get more money for it listing it on the market, but I just want a quick, easy sale. So that's a different type of motivation, right? You don't always necessarily have to be looking at a deep, distressed property if there's motivation in other areas, like Logan said, with divorce and, you know, whatever, tax delinquent. It could be financial. It could be emotional. It could be job related. It could be... There's all sorts of different reasons people would sell a property at a discount.
100%.
So yeah.
And when you are buying it at a deep discount on those more distressed situations, I always educate the consumer, educate the seller, and basically be like, hey, listen, the reason why we are coming in at the price that we're coming in at, we have a target number in mind, right? Our margin is, you know, we're looking to make X amount on this deal, right? And I'll be transparent with that and say, listen, you know, by the time that the work is done, withholding cost, purchase price, and work done to the property, this is how much we're going to be in the property. And our hope and goal is to get this. We might not even get this. This is just what we're projecting. So now, obviously, we're conservative with our numbers because we want to make sure that we are hopefully getting that number, you know. But, you know, you just educate them and explain to them, you know, you're providing a solution to them at the end of the day.
Well, and it helps a lot to break down that barrier, because I think a lot of times when somebody, you know, gets a cash offer or reaches out to an investor, they're thinking, okay, is this guy trying to take advantage of me? They're just trying to get my property for the lowest price possible. And it's kind of like it becomes an adversary, right? You're button up against where you feel like you're what you guys want aren't aligned. And if you show the homeowner or whoever you're dealing with, the agent even, the numbers in reverse and say,
Yep.
hey, listen, this is the number we're shooting for. We need to put about this much into the property, and so we really need to buy it at this for it to make sense. It's just a mathematical equation. It takes a lot of that tension out of the room.
Of course.
You're able to do that.
And also, I mean, one of the big things that a lot of new investors overlook is holding costs. You know,
Holding costs, points and fees on loans.
Exactly. That's what. I include all that together. I mean,
absolutely.
That's money out of your pocket.
It's a lot too. It's not insignificant, and the longer the rehab process takes, the longer those fees start adding up.
Yep.
And that's a really good point, because they don't show you that on HGTV. They show you, they bought it for this, and then they're going to put this much money into it, and then they're going to resell it for this, and it's all profit. What about closing costs, title costs, real estate commissions, points and fees, taxes, utilities?
Yep.
I mean, the list goes on and on of what the money that gets taken out of that profit.
Yeah, and you're closing on it twice.
Exactly.
You know, so when you purchase it, you're closing on it, and you have, your fees then. But then when you sell it, you have additional fees as well. Yeah. So it's you got to factor all that in there.
Absolutely. And typically, when somebody's an investor is given a cash offer to a seller on a property, they're paying for the closing costs for both sides.
Yep.
So it's even more than a traditional sale where typically the buyer and seller will split some of those fees, right?
Yep.
So, those are all really, really important things to make sure that you understand or are aware coming into it. In our program, and I've been building this out in our CRM, which is pretty cool. And actually, I'm going to show it to you, Logan, because you haven't seen it yet. But I'm able to track, in real time as far as my interest rate on my hard money loan, how many months the reno is going to take, what the points and fees look like. And so I can spit out a calculation and understand what are my total projection costs for the rehab, what are my total projection costs for closing, what are my total projection costs for the hard money, so that I know after all of that is in, okay, we're purchasing at this, our ARV is this after repair value, what we're shooting to sell it for, and I know every single cost that's going to go into it and come up with a projection profit, right?
Yep.
So that's very important when you're looking to fix and flip. So that's a backwards, and how we get ARV basically, or after repair value, is by looking at comps.
Contact me.
Comps? Yeah.
Contact a local professional.
Touch on how comps work, Logan.
You just pulling comparable properties in the area, like properties that have sold within a reasonable amount of time. Obviously the closer the better,
right.
And the more like the property is, the better. But obviously in certain areas, more rural areas and more, not as high volume areas. Some of these mountain properties, up north. You go into some of these counties and just. They've been 2 houses have sold in the last 6 months,
And that's a good standpoint to stay away from those kind of properties.
Yeah,
even if you can
sure.
find comps that are sold in the last year and stuff. If there's not a huge amount of turnover of properties selling, I would stay away from those.
Correct. Yeah, one of my investors actually passed on a deal that we projected he could have made around $100,000 on it, but because of the long term, I mean, we're looking at probably a 6 to 12 month. Cycle to be able to sell that property. It just wasn't worth the risk.
Right, exactly. And another thing to touch on comps is I think a lot of times, especially if you're new, people look at comps for like comparable as the property sits now, which doesn't help you at all, because you're not trying to get the value of what it is as it sits. You want the value of a comp that has been fixed up.
Correct.
That is going to be like the property once you fix it up and sell it.
Yeah, so if you're adding bathrooms, you're adding bedrooms, you're adding any square footage, obviously permits need to be pulled for some of this stuff, but if you're adding additional value other than just a cosmetic rehab, you need to look at properties that are comparable to that. If it's a 3-2 and you're going to sell it as a 4-3, with an extra 600 square foot, that's a whole different property.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. So make sure you're looking at comps that are comparable to the after value that you give to it, right?
Yep. And then you got to budget for all that too. I mean, obviously you're like, oh, well, the work is going to cost this much, but then pulling permits and everything like that, that's additional cost as well. So you need to try and factor in everything, and you want to be as conservative with your numbers, like range high, and then on the resale on the ARV range low, so.
And I would make sure too, even with all that said, have a minimum of what you need to project and profit to be able to move forward, knowing that there's going to be contingencies in there and there's going to be things that probably eat away at that profit, not give you more profit.
Correct.
So, $20K minimum, right? I'm not touching anything unless it gives me a $20K minimum profit, right? After being very aggressive on numbers and making sure, that I have a margin of safety in there, because you don't want to get in a flip and have all this overhead and all these moving parts with a projected profit of 10 grand.
Correct.
That's going to go away real quick. It's going to get eaten up. Things will happen that you never saw coming.
Oh yeah. Once you start opening up some walls, man. Yeah. Some of the stories that I've heard.
Oh yeah, it can get really bad.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, and things are no longer cheap. Well, I don't know if they've ever been cheap, but they're even more expensive now than they've ever been. Labor, materials, all of it. So,
correct.
And so how do you come up with a rehab budget? How do you come up with a rehab value?
Well, at the end of the day, you need a good contractor, or, if you can do the work yourself, then you can budget for all that. If you're doing everything yourself and you're doing smaller flips, typically, a jack of all trades typically isn't taking on a full house gut reno.
Right.
But if you're a jack of all trades and you're doing some cosmetic stuff, similar to the example you gave earlier, you can budget, okay, well, this is what it's going to cost me for my materials. If I'm doing it all myself, I'm, maybe budget in your labor hours if you're going to pay yourself on your labor, or your guys. I'm sure you probably have a team if you're a contractor. So at the end of the day, it's just whoever's doing the work, you need to be able to get accurate quotes from those guys. And it needs to be somebody you know and trust that is going to get the work done not only the right way, but in a timely manner, based on your schedule and your timeline. There's
a lot of really bad horror stories of contractors taking money and just running with it and not finishing the project.
Oh, well, that's on the worst side, but even on the bad side, but not as bad, is they just take forever.
Right.
So they say, it's going to take me 2 to 3 weeks, and it takes them 6 to 8. Well, that's eating at your profits. Yeah. Every day is eating at your profits.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's typical, I would say. And that's where it's really, really important that you have a solid team, or you have a solid expertise in knowing how to do it yourself, because you want to make sure that whoever it is you're working with is going to get the projects done in a timely fashion and in a good fashion and at the budget that they say they're going to get it done.
Well, exactly. You don't want to be taken advantage of at the end of the day.
Right.
So, probably the biggest thing is knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
And as long as you know your numbers, and then you can check for quality of work, you're good to go.
Yeah. And I would say too, that's why it's insanely important that you buy right too, because let's say something does happen, unfortunately, and for whatever reason you can't get the project finished. If you bought at the right numbers, you'll still be able to resell that very, very quickly to another investor who can pick it up, and you probably can even make a profit on it if you bought it at the right numbers. So that's where it's very, very important to buy right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not a numbers person, real estate investing probably is not for you. And I would contact somebody who has a fund. We are in the works of putting a fund together, so you can contact us and we can invest your money and get you passive returns on it. Yeah. And there's plenty of other folks that we can connect you with that are investors that have these large funds that we work with on a regular basis that are using other people's money to create their passive income and also, the investor's passive income.
Yeah, and I would say even if you are a numbers person, but you have a full-time job, and this takes a lot of moving parts. It's really a full-time gig, So even if you know the power of real estate and you've always thought about wanting to do it yourself, but you're stretched thin, you got family, you're a full-time job and everything, it's probably a good thing, whether it's us or somebody else, to look at investing in real estate passively in other areas.
100%. Yeah, because you got to think, you got to find the leads. You gotta find the quality leads. So that's the hardest part probably.
Oh, it's 100%.
Yeah, like once you actually have some quality leads that are sellers actually looking to sell within your area, then you go out to site and then you create the relationship and let them know how you can help them. At J.R.Heller, we have a multitude of options. So obviously our goal is to pick up as many properties as we can. Can't always do that. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we're putting them on the market. Sometimes we're doing some lease options with them and some creative financing. So it just depends on the circumstance, right? But first step is getting those leads.
That's the biggest thing. Because majority of the leads you get, they're not going to be willing to sell at a price that you need to have it for.
Correct.
And this is the hardest part. And I had this conversation with another investor the other day. It's literally the hardest part of the entire game, which is why wholesalers exist, because wholesalers fill a need where they're finding the deals. If they're good wholesalers, a lot of wholesalers find deals that don't make sense.
The majority of them find bad deals.
Yeah, they find bad deals. But if you're a good wholesaler, that's why you get paid a lot of money in assignment fees, is because you're taking the legwork out of finding that deal, which is the hardest part of doing the entire thing. I always say, it's fairly easy to be able to, if you know what you're looking at, it's fairly easy to be able to come up with what a value of a property is once it's fixed up by looking at other comparables. It's fairly easy to get, a professional contractor who has really great reviews and does quality work to give you a solid number on what it's going to cost to get it to that, right? The true hardest part is finding those deals.
Yeah.
And you got to turn over a lot of stones to be able to get that done. And that's where we've created a very good machine that is able to sort through all of those kind of different people and make sure that we're fitting them in the correct box for what they're looking for.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
That's why it's beneficial to work with someone like us.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Awesome.
You want to touch on anything else?
No,
That's pretty good.
I think
maybe we can do a whole segment. I wanted to touch vaguely on where to find the money to be able to get these deals done, hard money stuff. But I think that might actually be a whole separate video on its own. Because
we could
there's a
get
lot
into
of different
that.
avenues and ways to do that. So why don't you stay tuned? If you got value out of today, please subscribe, leave a comment below. And if you are interested in the next episode, which will be about the hard money, about how to find funding to be able to get these deals done, look out for our next video, and appreciate you guys being here.
Thanks, guys.